Welcome everyone to Lessons from the Field. As you know, this is a series of interviews that we do with a diverse array of guests, all of whom have a common thread, and that is a passion for pharmacy and pharmaceutical sciences. Today, we're very fortunate to have Jess de Jesus, who is a 1990 graduate from our PharmD program. Dr. Jesus also has a MBA degree with a concentration in healthcare management. He's a fellow in the American College of Healthcare Executives. His position is Chief Pharmacy Officer at UCLA Health, and he's also Assistant Dean at UCSF School of Pharmacy. So, Jess, we're really happy to have you with us today. Thank you for taking time to be part of this program. And we're going to ask you a series of questions. Those questions hopefully will elicit insight for our guests, those listening, especially our students and those pharmacists who have graduated recently, who are still starting off and could use advice and wisdom from somebody who has been around the block like yourself and has a proven successful career in pharmacy. So Jess, let's just start off with, maybe you could give us a brief 3-minute tour of your career since you left UIC back in 1990.
Thank you, Dr. Schumock. I really appreciate you having me here as a guest. So after I left UIC, after graduate UIC, I became a clinical pharmacist over at that Northwestern University. And right after that, I practiced for about a year, and I got recruited over in Phoenix to be a clinical pharmacy coordinator and quality assurance coordinator. So I became a kind of a clinical pharmacy manager per se. Did that for many years and went up the ladder and became a supervisor of pharmacy, and as well as director of some of the largest hospitals in Arizona. And then I got recruited in 2005. I got recruited at the University of Miami to be the chief pharmacy officer over there, and took that and did that for many years. And came back to Phoenix, missed my family, and became the vice president of pharmacy services for the second largest health system in Arizona, which is Honor Health. I did that for probably 5 or 6 years, and really, I don't know if you know Phoenix, but it's very, very hot, and got recruited to be the vice president, chief pharmacy officer at Bethesda Deaconess over in Boston, which is part of Harvard. So I took that opportunity, and about almost 2 years there, I had to leave because I had some family reasons, my daughter. And so I moved back to the West Coast and became the chief pharmacy officer at UCLA Health and assistant dean of UCSF School of Pharmacy.
Yeah, it's really impressive how you moved up in the ranks and crisscrossed the United States on the way, hit some of
Yes.
probably the best places to live.
Yes.
From Chicago to Miami. I think there's a song here, Phoenix, Boston, and then LA. So you've seen a lot. A lot of our students wonder about the day-to-day activities of the folks that we have here as guests and their positions. So maybe you could just tell us what are the kind of day-to-day, the things that you do every day as a chief pharmacy officer?
For me, I think one of the first things I do, is that I round on some of my areas. I have a fairly large responsibility because I oversee 4 hospitals. I oversee 200 clinics. I oversee 5 retail and specialty pharmacy, and it's kind of scattered throughout. Actually, our clinics are in 4 counties. So I have a fairly large responsibility. We have 2 research pharmacy that we oversee over 700 clinical drug trials. We have one of the largest, probably the largest solid organ transplant. We do over 1,000 a year of solid organ transplant. So I do quite a bit. In fact, my day-to-day, really consists of a lot of meetings, which is kind of unfortunate, but especially now with all these Zoom meetings. So I do have a lot of meetings from either with other departments, with physicians and nurses, as well as with executives. So I have executive meetings. And then I also have meetings with my staff and my leaders. So I have a lot of my day is really involved in a lot of meetings.
Yeah, that's a huge span of responsibility with all the hospitals and activities that you're involved in. Was there a certain point along the way where you decided that a management career was something that you wanted to go down? And you've obviously been very successful with that, or did it happen kind of more naturally?
I think it kind of happened more naturally. You know, when I took the job, when I was in Northwestern, I was focused on very clinical. I had a very clinical focus, and it was all patient care, and I loved it. You know, it was 10 hours every day of just you know focus on patient care. And then when I moved to Phoenix to be the clinical pharmacy coordinator as well as the quality assurance coordinator, I had a large scope because it was just an under 400 bed hospital, and basically it was the only management was the director and myself, and so I took on a lot more administrative and management responsibilities and just kind of moved up, from there. And I kind of liked that I was able to make much more of a significant impact than I did as a clinician.
Yeah. Well, you've obviously done well at it. And I mean, this next question, probably hard to answer because you have had such important positions, but given what you've done so far, what is the career highlight? What has given you the most satisfaction, I guess, in any one of or all of the positions that you've been in?
Yeah, I think that, really, when I was practicing at Northwestern, I really loved, patient care, direct patient care. We rounded, with the physicians and really we made a huge impact, I think, in patient outcome. Truly, I love that practice. I think that was one of the biggest highlight I had. When I moved over to Phoenix, they were a little bit behind as far as clinical practice. And so I was able to bring clinical practice to the hospital, and it became a big part of the hospitals, with physicians and things like that. So, after a while, they started asking me to go rounds with them, and they started, getting consults and things like that that was never done before. So those are probably some of my highlights as far as my clinical programs is concerned.
Great. Well, thank you. So I know it's been a little while since you were at UIC, but if you could go back and kind of think about what were the experiences or decisions that you made as a student, what would you share with our current students to help them move forward with their careers?
Yeah, I had a great practice. A lot of my rotations when I was at UIC was phenomenal. I've had a lot of pharmacy students. I've overseen a lot of pharmacy students and have collaborated with a lot of pharmacy schools. But really what I would tell the students is really to look at to kind of look at, the different practice and things like that, and because there's, people, at least when I was graduating or when I went to pharmacy school, it was, either retail or hospital. There are so many practice out there as far as pharmacy. And so you need to look at all of those and before you decide on a career.
That's great advice, Jess. I guess another thing I wanted to ask was, you've been in practice for some time now, and the further out you are from school, sometimes the harder it is to, keep up on all of the things that changing daily. But how do you stay relevant? How do you stay current? How do you expand your knowledge and experience and expertise to continue to be in the position like you, where you're sought after for these top level administrative jobs?
Well, I collaborate a lot with my colleagues. In fact, just got off the phone with our weekly meeting within the UC, which is, UCLA is part of a bigger network of, UC San Francisco, UC San Diego, UC Davis, UC Irvine, UCLA. So we meet on a weekly basis every Monday. And so we share a lot of best practices, and we try to standardize a lot of things. So I've been able to keep up because I do attend a lot of state and national and sometimes international pharmacy meetings. So been able to keep up that way and collaborating with my colleagues throughout the country. I also belong to a lot of several pharmacy executive committees. Currently, I belong to the Vizient and the Universal Health Consortium as well as the NCCN Pharmacy Executive Committee. So I keep up that way.
Yeah, well, that's great. Sounds like networking is a very important activity and skill for you. So let me ask next, I guess, as a pharmacist, and over the span of your career, if you could just pick one or two things, where do you think you've had the most significant impact?
I think that, everywhere I've ever been, I've been able to improve, not only the processes of, making workflows, pharmacy workflows more efficient and things like that, and more safe, patient safety. But I think that everywhere I've ever been, I've been able to expand clinical pharmacy services. And I think that's one of the highlights of my career is that, I've been able to expand clinical pharmacy services. Here at UCLA Health, I have tripled our transplant. It went from clinical specialist, it went from 2 to 6.
Wow.
And then here, our research department, I've been able to increase staffing from 3 to 10, over the past 2 years, really to support, clinical research. And we've opened up several PGY2 residencies. So we have new residency programs as far as PGY2 this year in transplant and infectious disease and things like that. So I've been able to expand the clinical practice throughout the institution.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, obviously that's a kind of a hallmark of UIC in our training here. And so it's great to see folks that have been here at one time to go out and spread the word and advance practice that way. And I'm sure you've done that every place you've been. So if you think about the impact of that across all of those new positions and all the patients and that would have been cared for by those new people, and just exponentially powerful. So thank you, Jess. Let me wrap this up with the last question. And as you know, we have pharmacists who have graduated in the last few years, still maybe finding their way in their career. And so we like to try to offer some advice to more recent graduates. What advice could you give them to better prepare themselves for a career like you've had over many years?
Well, I think that, in today's world, where there's so many pharmacists right now, you kind of need to distinguish yourself. And basically, I think the residencies, either PGY1 and PGY2, makes you a little bit distinguished, as far as practice. So one of the advice that I always give new pharmacists is not to limit your search, in a specific area, because here, people in California, they want to practice just in specific parts of California, and they don't want to go out of state, and things like that. And I think really to find what you like and what you're passionate about and what you want to learn, you want to grow as a clinician or as a person. And basically, I think that you need to find the right job to do this. And then you can always go back to, where you want to practice. But I think you need to gain that experience. It's something where you're passionate about.
Yeah, that's such great advice. I mean, we see that a lot too, as people wanting to stay in the Chicago area or whatever. And obviously, you have family and friends and so forth, but and you're somebody who's taken your own advice to heart in the positions you've had all across the United States, where you've gone and found the right job, the job that makes you better and challenges you and takes you to the next level. And that's really how you can advance more quickly. So, and just think of all the people that you've interacted with in those jobs, the network that you've established, and, experiences that you couldn't get if you stayed in the same place. So,
right.
Yeah, I'm glad that you take your own advice and it is certainly very good advice. So thank you, Jess, for that. And I don't know if there are any last minute things you want to bring up to those that might be listening or watching this recording, but I really appreciate you spending time with us and sharing your advice and experience with us.
Thank you. I appreciate it.